The War of 1812, often overshadowed by the American Revolution and the Civil War, is one of the most misunderstood and forgotten conflicts in American history. But don't let its quiet reputation fool you. This war was a pivotal moment in shaping the United States into the nation we know today. By the end of it, American independence was more than just words on paper. It was solidified on the battlefield. So what sparked this war? What were the key battles? And why, despite its enormous impact, has it been pushed to the edges of history? To understand why the War of 1812 happened, we need to rewind a bit to the aftermath of the American Revolution. Although America won its independence from Britain in 1783, tensions between the two countries didn't exactly disappear overnight. In fact, they lingered for decades, and by the early 1800s, a series of events pushed both nations back to the brink of war. One of the biggest issues? Impressment. The British Navy, locked in a seemingly endless war with Napoleon's France, was in desperate need of sailors. To fill their ranks, they began stopping American ships and forcibly drafting American sailors into British service. Can you imagine? You're peacefully sailing, doing your job, when suddenly British officers storm aboard and tell you that you're now part of the Royal Navy, whether you like it or not. Needless to say, Americans were outraged. Imagine this happening today. Let's say you're driving your car, heading to work, and then someone pulls you over, takes your keys, and tells you that your car is now their car. And worse, you're coming along for the ride. That's what this impressment felt like to Americans in the early 1800s. On top of impressment, the British were also restricting American trade, blocking U.S. ships from accessing European markets, and even providing support to Native American tribes resisting American expansion in the Northwest Territory. President James Madison, faced with mounting pressure, had no choice but to take action. On June 18, 1812, the United States declared war on Great Britain. At first, things didn't go well for the U.S. In fact, some of the early battles were downright disastrous. America was not exactly prepared to face the world's most powerful navy. One of the most famous examples? The failed invasion of Canada. That's right, the United States had the bold idea to invade British-controlled Canada. The plan seemed simple enough on paper, but it quickly became a mess. Poor leadership, lack of coordination, and divided public opinion led to a string of embarrassing defeats. In fact, British forces not only defended Canada, but even went on the offensive, capturing Detroit and parts of the Northwest Territory. But despite the rough start, the U.S. did manage to secure some key victories. One area where they excelled? The open seas. American warships like the USS Constitution, nicknamed Old Ironsides, earned a reputation for taking down British vessels in several important naval battles. These naval victories were a huge morale boost and showed that, despite the odds, America could hold its own against Britain's mighty fleet. But perhaps the most shocking moment of the war came in August of 1814, when British forces invaded Washington, D.C. In a move that would send shockwaves through the nation, the British burned the White House, the Capitol, and other important government buildings. It was a major blow to American morale. Imagine this, your nation's capital, the symbol of your government, reduced to ashes. It was a humiliating moment for the young United States. But it wasn't the end. The war was far from over. Just weeks later, the British attacked Baltimore and bombarded Fort McHenry in a bid to crush American resistance. But here the story took a dramatic turn. The Americans held firm. As the British bombarded the fort through the night, an onlooker, a man named Francis Scott Key, was inspired to write what would become the lyrics to the Star-Spangled Banner. That flag still flying over the fort became a symbol of resilience and defiance. That moment was a turning point, not just for the war, but for American identity. The war wasn't just about survival anymore. It became a symbol of America's determination to stand strong, no matter the odds. And finally, we arrive at the famous Battle of New Orleans in 1815. General Andrew Jackson led a ragtag group of American soldiers, frontiersmen, and even pirates to an astonishing victory over a larger British force. Ironically, the battle took place after the war had technically ended. Peace had been agreed upon in December of 1814 with the signing of the Treaty of Ghent. But the news hadn't yet reached Jackson and his troops. The Treaty of Ghent essentially restored pre-war borders with no significant land gains for either side. So what was all the fighting for? Well, while the territorial map didn't change, the war had profound long-term effects. First, the War of 1812 gave Americans a renewed sense of national identity. It was a defining moment where the U.S. proved to itself and to the world that it could stand up to a global superpower. Again, it wasn't just about winning battles. It was about showing that the United States wasn't going anywhere. Second, the war spurred economic growth. With British imports disrupted, American industries began to develop, laying the foundation for the country's economic expansion in the coming decades. In the end, the War of 1812 was a messy, complicated conflict that many Americans today barely remember. But without it, the U.S. might not have solidified its place on the world stage as a truly independent nation. The battles may be forgotten, but their impact lives on in the very fabric of America. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the War of 1812, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more incredible stories from history. And let us know in the comments, what part of this forgotten war surprised you the most?